right, so today we're going to talk about how to raise money. And Johnson and I will be sharing a bit of our background, our story, how we started and how we actually talked to investors, got some funds, got traction, and got to where we are today. It's supposed to be a conversational style, and as you can see, he's not here yet, but he will very soon. Okay, so very brief introduction. This is me. So iMoney was founded in 2012. I came back from Australia, having spent 8 years there. Just before I get into my story, so today we're the largest money comparison website in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines. We're number 2 in Singapore, definitely the biggest in Southeast Asia. So in aggregate, we generate about 1.5 million unique visitors. And in a nutshell, what we are is, for those that don't know, we compare financial products, things like credit cards, personal loans, home loans, insurance, anything to do with your day-to-day personal finance. And the idea is, today is an extremely difficult time, or very, very difficult to find the best financial product for you. We try and remove complexities and help consumers compare, find the best, and apply for products. So, fundraising traction. So as you can see, I had the privilege of raising quite a number of rounds. So in total, it's about $6.5 million US. This is Johnson. We'll come back to this shortly. So, how it all started. I thought I'll start by just giving you a bit about, the sort of backstory. And again, this is sort of sharing, and I encourage you guys, if anyone has any questions at any point in time, if you want to just put up your hand and just shout out. I'm sure someone will go around with a mic. This session is as much as useful for you if you sort of get things out of me. So if you feel that I'm not covering a certain part or certain point, do sort of stop me. I think we've got Johnson here now.
Hi everyone.
Hey, so we just started.
Okay, cool.
So, do you want to give a brief intro about yourself, and then we can just go into the conversation? So I was telling the guys that treat this as a conversation.
Right.
So to be fair, I think we were very much preparing until late last night.
Yep.
I think Johnson has a few questions for me, and I've got a few questions for his business as well. But we'll focus a lot more on fundraising and early stage of startup. Yeah. So.
Hi, I'm Johnson. I founded a company called Addict TV. Basically, we're in the curation space. So we kind of like started a news aggregation product about 3.5 months ago. Right now, we are at about 3 million monthly screen views right now from about 20,000 users. So yeah, so I raised funds from a few countries, Taiwan, Singapore, and also some angel investors in Malaysia. So I'll get more into it in terms of stories. So let's just go on for now.
Okay.
Let me catch my breath first.
Good that you can make it. Okay, so how it all started. So as I mentioned, my background is in finance. I spent 8 years in Australia. The first 3 years studying an accounting and finance degree, and then I stayed on to work in Melbourne. So my first job out of uni was actually as a financial planner. So it's not very common here having financial planners, but if you think about private banking in Malaysia, rich mom and dads with some money and need some advice on what to do, that was my job, right, giving the advice. I did that for about a year or so, and then I moved on to become an investment consultant. And very much the same role, except I was now advising big pension funds. So Malaysian equivalent would be the EPF. They manage retirees' money or anyone's sort of retirement fund. So my smallest client was, I think, 300 million in funds under management, and the largest one was probably about 1 or 2 bill.
Wow.
And collectively, the company that I work for, they manage about 100 billion in Australian dollars. So again, that was about 3 years. I spent a lot of my time advising funds on what to do. More complicated. And I want to sort of dwell into that because obviously with iMoney and the finance field, that was where I've accumulated a lot of my knowledge. And in my last year in Australia, I got bored of the corporate life, right? That's the truth. And I started experimenting, and I always had this interest in tech startups. I was following all the big companies, the exciting ones like Dropbox, Evernote in the US. Started reading a lot about online marketing, following blogs that talk about Silicon Valley and how the companies scale. And in my last year in Australia, I actually started a few businesses on the side. So this is sort of story that many of you probably don't know. And it's funny, so I remember working my full-time day job, 9 to 5, go home, I would start checking whether I've got orders for my ukulele business online. So selling ukuleles.
But that's great. I mean, like that provided you a sort of like a business space, right?
Exactly. And it all stemmed from the interest and passion. So I left Australia in early 2012. I came back to Malaysia, and immediately I knew I didn't want to go back to the corporate world, right? So in Malaysia, there wasn't a lot of investment community. The best you could do is go and join a bank, and not really that keen to work in sort of a banking environment. But my interest for startups and starting companies was still there, right? And so the ideation stage was when, as a sort of returning resident after spending 8 years abroad, I come back, I need a credit card, I need a savings account. Natural, right? So I went online naturally.
Do you buy cars too, like from the program?
Sorry?
Do you buy cars from the returning?
No.
program
I
too?
actually, I wasn't smart enough to explore Talent Corp. So I came back and very much, I've obviously some savings from Australia working there, and I needed to put my money somewhere, and that was really the spark of the idea because naturally the first thing I did was went online and I Googled best savings account, best credit card. Found nothing, right? The top side was Maybank, second was CIMB, and I don't want to spend my time sitting down and doing research one by one. I was like, where's this comparison site that I'm so used to? Because in Australia, there's a company called iSelect, which invested in us. They run, comparisons on products, and that was how I got my credit card in Australia. So that was really the spark of it, and I'll delve into it a bit more because this sort of ties into how I got my first funding. So that problem came about, and a couple of months later, I started meeting up with the local startup community, and you guys probably know Kylie. He gave a keynote speech this morning, which I heard was really good. Kylie and I went to school back in Damansara Jaya, so I knew him from there, and I went to him in my early days. Actually, it's funny, initially to see if there's anything we could work together on, right? Almost like a job interview. And then he was like, oh, so we started chatting, and I sort of gave my background, and he started asking me questions on whether I know about this opportunity, this money comparison opportunity. And I was like, oh, you know what? That was exactly what I was thinking about. Why isn't there such a thing in Malaysia? Because I recently had to apply for a card, and started going. And then he introduced me to my current co-founder called Bruno. So Bruno, I'll spend a bit of time because it's kind of relevant later on, but he is a Portuguese by nation, but he spent 10 years in the UK. He was poached by CMB to come to Malaysia, and he worked in the bank for, I think, 2 years as a product head. And we sort of sat down and had a chat, and okay, sorry. And we started, sort of sharing the same pain about this lack of an independent site that helped consumers compare and find the best financial product. And we started doing our research and very much came to a conclusion that there is a market for this. Banks are starting to advertise online, and that was how I got my initial sort of setup, right? And I raised funds from day one. from both Kylie and Bruno. And actually, it's not what I listed, but so I put in some money myself, and the three of us got started with me running the business, and those two supporting from the back, right? And that got us going. So day one, it was myself. I hired an intern maybe 2 weeks later. We woke off a coffee shop for the longest of time. And we had a part-time programmer, and that was it. You know, bare bone team, so 2.5 men. And the first 90 days was very much us trying to get a product up, drive traffic, drive traction, and you know, trying to grow as much as possible.
So you actually raise money without a product?
So depending on how you define as raise money, but essentially I started off with some of my own capital,
yeah,
but also
right. Okay.
raised from two angels, yes.
Right, okay.
And yes, I didn't have a single product back then. All I had was myself, you know, track record, and my desire to do and start
and good
iMoney.
friends, basically.
And good friends, connections. But you know, we were talking to that later in the slides on how I got, you know, sort of this traction even before I had a product. And the first 90 days was important because for me it was very much, you know, you're out to build something, and I spent a lot of time on metrics that mattered. So for us, visitors was very important. We grew visitors in all ways possible. We tried not to spend any money because obviously we didn't raise that much. So a lot of my efforts were very much on content and SEO and organic stuff. You know, I try and get as much interviews on newspapers as possible. Appeared on MyEG Make the Pitch. So for those that watched the program, probably saw us there 2 years ago. We were only like 7 days old, and you know we managed to get on the on the page. So that got us a lot of initial traction. And we started knocking on all the bank stores from day one, right? So we knew we needed to get the banks on board for this model to work. So I started talking to, I think I got RHB talking to us. That was the first bank, and you know, it was like the first 30 days we got a meeting locked in. And you know, the product itself was very basic, and you probably know about MVP by now. You know, it literally is one page with credit card comparisons as the first product, and I launched it. And then 2 days later, I launched a home loan page. You know, 2 days later, I launched a savings account. It was one by one, and it was all done by myself and my intern at a coffee shop. But you know, we managed to grow what mattered, which is users, right, and visitors. And I guess, you know, so this was in June when I started. At about September, we saw that traction was there. And we knew that if we were to continue, we needed to raise some funds to build a team. And that was when I started fundraising, right? So we'll go into details, but the sort of initial period was very much myself. I managed to convince my part-time programmer to join me full-time, and that was one of the key, I guess, piece of the puzzle in sort of, you know, building that first foundational team. We got our term sheets, I think the first term sheets probably in November, December. And then very soon after that, you know, we got 2 or 3 more. And you know, that got us our first ringgit 1 million, right? So I'll stop there, because, you know, obviously we'll talk about it in some coming slides, but maybe I'll pass it on to you, Johnson, just to tell your story.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Slide.
Surely.
Whoops. Is that yours?
We'll pretend we didn't see that. No, it's not mine.
All right, so I will split my story into 3 stories, actually 3 main stories. Firstly, like how I actually got my first angel investor on board. The story is actually pretty similar to what Ching told, so I'll start with that, and then I think you can tell the next part of the story, like we can take turns.
Yep. No,
we obviously didn't plan this very well, so I'm sorry for that. Yeah, so basically, I started off, like, unlike Ching actually, like, worked for a couple of years before actually going into it. I was a little bit more hot-headed, in right out of uni, I started like trying shit, right? I mean, right out of uni, I was like, okay, I have nothing. I know nobody. I have no good friends that are in the tech space. In the tech space, I knew nobody. So when I came out, I was like, okay, what do I need? I mean, I always believe that in business, to be able to get stuff done, you need to be good friends with a lot of people. People do a lot of business with their friends, right? So I was like, okay, I was thinking like, how do I actually hack this? So I basically like found a couple of ways, you know, like, and I actually settled on using LinkedIn. So basically LinkedIn, in the past, now you can't do it anymore. Too bad for you guys, but you can't do it anymore. So you can actually hack the system by, like, if let's say you want to meet someone, right? You search for like investors on LinkedIn, the search results will all come out, or you search for like mentors or like CEOs or something like that on LinkedIn, and all the results will come out. But it won't, the full name will not come out, right? It will come out like Johnson G, or like, you know, Lee, Ching L. So the way to get around that was you guess their full name, or you find their full name, and then you search in Google that name LinkedIn, like Johnson Go LinkedIn. Then from there you can actually connect directly to them. So I did that for 100 over people. Basically everyone in Malaysia that had CEO in their name, or like, you know, investor in their name. I did that for everyone. Then
so you just spam people just to get their attention, is it?
no lah, I asked them out for coffee lah. I spent a lot on coffee lah, you know. So I that was the initial kind of like investment lah. So yeah, I managed to meet a couple of interesting people, a lot of interesting people actually. I would say 80% of them have nothing to do with you at this point in time. They're like just time wasters. 80-90%, probably closer to 90. They have nothing to do with you, time wasters, people who claim that they're something that they're not. You know, a lot of these kind of funny characters basically. But in the end, it was the few that mattered the few that were really useful that really mattered. So one of my investors, actually, one of my initial angel investors, when I had nothing but a piece of paper and a piece of drawing, basically screens for a certain project at that point of time, which was kind of a stupid kind of idea if I think back. It's basically like a game platform that gave real world rewards. That's what I kind of like shitty started with.
So Johnson, when you went to the angel investors, or these guys that you spam, you already had an idea in mind?
I did not spam.
You already had an idea in mind, or?
Yeah, I already had an idea in mind. So like, I came out right out of university. So like, the only things I knew were like entertainment, games, and like, you know, a few other like reading and stuff like that. I know like stuff like uni students know, right? So I chose one of it, which is games. Basically something that I enjoy doing. So I already had the idea for that, and I sort of like drew the idea out and sort of like started to approach people, not so much for investment. I didn't sort of like have that. I wanted advice. So basically I went to them for like, you know, what do you think about this? You know, like how, like the actual intention is to get them to give me advice on my idea. So not really to like, you know, going to them for investment. So one of them ended up investing. His name is like, it's actually weird. This guy's name was Brian Woods. He's actually I don't know, like some 100 millionaire lah. Basically he sold a gambling company in the UK. I think it's a public listed gambling company. He sold it off. He owns a couple of casinos in Prague and stuff like that. And he was in Malaysia because his wife was posted here for something. He's retired, so he had nothing to do. So when I approached him, he was like, yeah, I have something to do now, you know. So I gave him something he wanted, which was something to work on, basically. And he ended up putting in $50,000 just like that on a piece of paper. He took like 20% of that old company, and we started running. So from this $50,000, I mean, $50,000 US, you can do a lot of shit. I mean, like you can actually get like, you know, programmers on board. You know, that's how I actually met my co-founder. We basically engaged him on a freelance basis, and so he needs money to like kind of like to survive, like, you know, family obligations and yada yada yada. So yeah, that's how I got my co-founder on board and another engineer on board, and we started working on a project, and we learned a lot lah.
So it's probably worth just pausing here and just sort of addressing the first point, because we both raise essentially angel money with very little to show for, right? And I'd be interested to know your experience and how you actually got on board, the angel investor that you managed to talk to. But from my personal perspective, when I came back and I talked to Kylie and I talked to Bruno, what I could show was my domain knowledge, and essentially what convinced someone like Kylie to invest in me, with basically just an idea, was that I had the track record, so I was very familiar with financial services because my work experience, and I was willing to put in my own money. So that's one thing I'll address later as well. There is that commitment from myself. I have something to lose in this. I should have done things, in my last year. So I started websites. That sort of convinced him that I was going to be serious in this, right? Well, what about you? What did you do right to convince your first angel?
That's a good question. I think it's mostly like I was trying to create a relationship. I mean, I was trying to create a friendship more than anything else lah. I mean, I didn't go to him for anything. I didn't expect anything in return. He wanted, like, I sort of like found ways of how I could help him. Like, because he was just in Malaysia, so I helped him, settle down in Malaysia, recommend places to him, bring him around, stuff like that. I looked at creating friendship, so that there's a trust level there, and he knows that I work hard for my shit because like we talk, and he knows that I'm like putting in a lot of hours, a lot of stuff on the line, and he knows that I'm giving up a lot to start my own company, basically. So that created kind of like a level of trust for him to just write a check, cut a check.
Okay, no, interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Kind of different, so yeah.
Okay, so that's your first angel. What about Taiwan?
Okay, so that's the second part of the story. So Taiwan, the Taiwanese investor, they're called TMI Ventures. So they're actually our first institutional pre-seed kind of like VC. So instead of going for grants, I actually went directly for equity-based investment. So the second story, like what I want you all to take away from it is basically perseverance. So like continuing from the previous story, so the game thing did not work out. Okay, so obviously we struggled to find traction with good enough games. We struggled to find traction with users and stuff like that. So it was a double-side thing, and with a small team that we had, and like me being way stupider back then, I'm still stupid, but way stupider back then. I didn't manage to make it work lah. So basically, I didn't manage to make it work. So like we had a few days, we had a month left of money. So we decided this was our own personal money. The rest of the excess money we sort of gave it back. So with that month, we actually within the first 3 days of that month, we actually started brainstorming and come up with a prototype for a curation platform for music videos to solve our own problems, because we wanted to like watch music videos and stuff like that is categorized. So that's kind of like that's kind of how we started like the new company called Addict TV, and from there, okay, so we knew that we had like less than a month to leave when the product went live, like 3 weeks. Now I was like, fuck, now I need to really, oh sorry, we need to really, I need to really like go all out. I need to go all out to like either find investors to make it work or like sell it or something, to keep the company alive. And eventually, like, started doing the same things, like using email hacks, like really messaging people randomly and stuff like that.
Spamming again?
Yeah, spamming again, back to spamming. Yeah, okay.
So this was the first 50K that you raised, and then you
I
worked on
shut
the
the
game
company
idea, and then it didn't work out, and
Yeah.
then now you pivoted into a new
so
social
into a
curation.
new
Okay.
thing. So I basically like tried to persevere and try to make it work rather than give it up. I don't know, like in retrospect, it's a good thing, but I don't know if this advice applies to everyone. So basically I got win. I basically got I heard that this guy called Alvin Boon, which is one of the partners at TMI VC, he's actually Malaysian. He's based in Taiwan, Malaysian. He started this thing called Plug. All you Chinese school people should know. Plug is like one of the first microblogging services in the world. So so he started this company. Then yeah, I heard he's coming to Malaysia to give a talk. So I just randomly messaged him on Facebook. I didn't spam. I really I courteously asked for a meeting, okay, on Facebook. So to my surprise, he actually agreed. He agreed. He agreed, and then basically he asked me out for Starbucks before one of his talks. I had 30 minutes to talk to him about what we're doing. I showed him what we built. He liked it. So he basically took it back to his partners in Taiwan and basically pushed the deal through within the period that that we had left. So that was actually kind of unheard of. But I guess what you can take away from that is like just don't give up. I mean, until the second that you actually die, your company actually dies, or I don't know, something happens to you, okay? So you don't give up, and just push till the very end while you have something left, while you have some resources left.
So you basically talked to one party, and that party agreed to fund the next
I talked to a
stage.
whole lot of people. So yeah, a whole lot of people, but out of that, many people that I talked to, I can't even remember how many people I talked to, but that one person actually agreed. So it only takes one person to like believe in you to make shit happen. So that's a kind of a
Sorry, I'll interject there because it's sort of a similar stage after my first initial 90 days, and when we realized we needed to raise funds, we were the same. So we went and talked to all the VCs in town. In fact, there were a few Singaporean-based ones that flew in to see us as well, and it was meetings after meetings, and again we sort of addressed like time. How much time should you spend on fundraising, because it is a full-time job. But I did remember going to a couple of VCs, and until I got my first term sheet, it was very much hard work, right, and hard sell. But so for me, it was. We got our first term sheet, and that sort of proved that someone was willing to back us, and very quickly we were able to convince 2 or 3 more parties to also provide us with terms. Right. In the end, we chose to go with a company called Asia Venture Group. So Asia Venture Group, you guys might have heard of them. It's run by a person called Tim Marbach. He's a German ex-entrepreneur, so he used to start a company that is, a mobile coupon company in Germany. It grew to 250 people, 4 countries. He sold it to, I can't remember what the company was. And then he moved to Asia, and he wanted to invest in early stage companies and be actively involved in helping them grow. So we saw that aspect of Asia Venture Group that was quite different to some of the other VCs, traditional funds that we were speaking to, that he could actually contribute these value, and in the end went with him, even though the valuation was not, the best, and we again talk about that.
So how did it feel like to raise? Like, what was your feeling after?
It's good, of course. I think that the thing for me was that the first million ringgit we got was very specific in a sense that we needed to use it to grow the team and to set us up for the next stage, because that's exactly what we did. The first, the moment the money hit the bank account, we used it to build a strong management team. So when I talked to the VCs and got my first term sheet, it was 2.5 people. Once we got the money in, that went into hiring some key people in product, in technology. We even got like a HR/office manager to help me sort of run things, and we got the initial set of core people, right? So very quickly we grew from basically 3 or 4 people to about 10, 12 people, and that was my next stage. So again, spending a lot on content, organic, and driving traffic, hiring people to work with banks alongside me, and again focusing on growth.
So you had a full plan on how you wanted to spend the money before you raised that round from the Asia Venture?
Yeah, so when we talked to all the VCs, naturally, right, you need a plan. What are you going to use the money for? How much do you want to raise? And what your next sort of milestones look like?
I think they will be quite interested in like how detailed was the plan to a point that and during execution, like how much it kind of like differ from the plan that you pitch to the investors, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so according to my plan, I think today I should be a $1 billion company. Plans don't always work out as well, right? But I think you need something on paper to show that you at least have an idea of what you want to do. And it gets more and more complicated and sophisticated. So my last round with iSelect, where we raised $4 million US, the plan that we showed iSelect was a very different plan to the one I showed the first VC, right? Early in the days, I think it was more important that you show that, because the business generally is still very early. Most of the time when you raise your first seed round, you probably don't have enough traction, you probably don't have a good enough product, your monetization is probably still questionable. I think the key thing is showing at least what can you do to address these things, but focusing a lot more on things like traction, things like team. And again, we'll go through that, but that was what I sold really well, I think, is that we have a team that could execute the money that was given to us, and rather than giving our competitors, the VCs felt that we have the best chance of succeeding and winning in this market. And I think I like to think that we've shown that we've done that. Yeah.
Cool. So that's a big part of so I guess the big part of it is like convincing VCs that it's better to put money in you rather than the competitors. So that's kind of like the key takeaway from
Absolutely,
that.
yes. Yeah. I think early stage companies, VCs look for entrepreneurs to invest in, not businesses. Generally, they're investing in you and not your idea, because that could not turn out well in 6 months. But if you're a good entrepreneur, you can make any idea work. And as Johnson sort of shown as well, like his first 50K was supposed to be a gaming business, but obviously that didn't turn out. But you're still working on something pretty cool.
I'm lucky. So yeah. Okay. So all right. So I'll talk about my first institutional round. It's by Golden Gate Ventures. I don't know if you heard of them, but yeah. So the story started actually 3 years, 2-3 years before I raised the round. So what happened was, okay, when I was in my spamming stage, right? So when I was still spamming people, I got to know about this thing called Founders Institute. So back then there was nothing like Magic, nothing like, I don't know, Founders Institute was not in Malaysia, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. So this Founders Institute thing just came to Singapore, right, at that point of time. So, right, so I found out about it somehow through some random Google searching, and I ended up sort of like applying for it, just for fun, just you had to take a test to enter. So yeah, I applied for it just for fun, and I managed to get in. But the problem was the classes were held every Monday in freaking Singapore. So I was like, what the hell? Like how am I going to attend this? So I was like, okay. So I don't know, it's just something in me told me that, okay, I should definitely go. I know that the money, a lot of money is in Singapore. The government there is taking a lot of right initiatives and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, fuck it, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go every week. I'm going to drive down every freaking week just to attend the class and like get to know people. So, okay, so that's how I kind of like started kind of like building a really, really an okay network, okay network in Singapore. Got to know a lot of people there, and like, so that sort of like set me up to raise funds in the future. But so when I was there, I mean, I didn't have any kind of like particular intention. I didn't want to go there to meet people to like, hey, give me money, hey, give me money, like stuff like that. I just wanted to make friends and like get advice and like really, really, give people what they want, which is like, to feel smart when they help you. That's kind of a real truth of the matter. People actually feel smart when they help you, and you're giving them that kind of joy. So like that's kind of like the mentality I went in with, and so I built a whole lot of friends, a lot of connections, people that I'm still friends with, very, very close friends with today. They invite me to their babies' full moon parties and shit like that. So it's like really. Really, really good friends, okay? That's the point of the matter. But, okay, so that's how I kind of like and like I was like particularly good friends with Jeff. Jeff was kind of like taken aback that I actually took the effort to really drive down every. Jeff is one of the partners at Golden Gate. So he was kind of taken aback that I was like really like trying out each week and stuff like that. And
So were you the only Malaysian that did that?
yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, probably the only person till date. So yeah, I had an uncle's place that I stayed over in JB, and so I drove in I drove in from JB. Like I drove in for the class, then I drove out after drinks. So not a good idea, by the way. Yeah, so drove out after drinks, basically to save money. Yeah, so that's how I met Jeff. He was quite taken aback, and we sort of like built a very, very deep bond and a very deep trust level from that. And he's been like throughout the whole journey, he's been helping me out a lot. And if he's here, thank you for that. Okay, I think he's not, but okay, cool. I can talk bad things about him now. Yeah, so that's how I kind of like built a relationship there, and this relationship sustained for like 2 years, like 2-3 years until now. Until now, we're still very, very good friends. So when it, like, I guess the key is like to not force issues on people. I mean, don't keep bugging people to invest if they don't really want to. Just really get to know the person and really build relationships. And when the time is right, the deal will just come. The deal will just appear. So we started building up, and to a point where he felt that the traction was enough for him to come in. He actually, they actually offered to can we invest? So that's kind of like how I raised my first institutional.
So that's a good point you mentioned, Jonathan. So from my perspective, it almost looks like you've really invested time and energy and effort on building relationships and network, even though you didn't need to do that, right? All these efforts of going down and driving down to Singapore and spending time with these people and getting to know them as a person and mentors. Was the investment you put in, right? And I can kind of relate to myself as well because we did very much similar things. So we spent a lot of time talking to investors and keeping them up to date, even though we didn't need the funds. And it was about getting them involved, and when the time comes that we needed to raise, they already knew the business, they already knew you as a person, and that helped you get traction.
Right. Yeah. To reiterate, people invest in friends. People do business with friends, and it's what most of us are kind of like mentally geared to do. So the more friends that you have, real friends, not like hi-bye, go for one drink and then don't see each other for a year, and but real friends, it's very valuable, very, very valuable.
Okay, so just conscious of time, I'm going to just talk about certain things that investors generally look for when it comes to raising a first round. And again, Johnson, feel free to sort of chip in. I think early in the stage, it's still very much down to your product and whether you're actually solving the right problem. So I mentioned here problem and solution, and is it a good to have or a need to have? How good is your solutions? And if you think about us at iMoney, we created something that solves the pain that consumers face when it comes to comparing products. Prior to iMoney, it was extremely difficult to compare a credit card from one bank to the other. Today, it's much easier. And this is a need. And when investors look at products to invest, between something that's sort of a need and a real problem in the market versus something that's good to have, I think the preference is generally for the former. So market size opportunity, I think you guys probably know this as well. How exciting is it? How big is this problem? Is this affecting 10 people or 10 million people? So when I talked to investors at the start, I knew that credit card searches were through the roof. There was something like 100,000 keyword search a month just on credit cards, another 100,000 on home loans, another 100,000 on personal loans. So I could show that it was a very, very big problem, and if we solve it, it would be a big impact to the world. And we could show that we can monetize this as well. So it's good to have the opportunity and the problem, sorry, the market there, but how can you actually make money from it? You want to add to this? How did you convince your investors when it comes to
similarly, so like I think a lot of problems that we have while sizing up your market is.
Hi, sorry to interrupt this. For those who already made their appointment for the speed dating at 11:30, please get ready, and you have to be out there on the second floor already. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. So in terms of market sizing, it's always a tricky thing lah. So there's different approaches, and the approach that works least is actually the approach where you say that it's $10 billion market. Advertising is a $10 billion market. But what people really want to know is a bottom-up approach where you know that, okay, this is your sort of a specific target market, and then you extrapolate from that and have a really realistic addressable market that, but more into that, I guess, in another session because this is way too short for that.
Competitive landscape, pretty important as well. So investors look at you and they would naturally do some comparison. Yes. Oh, sure. So what we do is we sell leads to banks. Any given point in time, we have, so today we generate about 1.5 million unique visitors to our websites. A lot of these visitors want to apply for a financial product. So we provide them a capture form where they can leave their details, and we then sell this to the banks, or we then help the banks monetize. Yeah? So yeah, competitive landscape I was saying it's pretty important because as an investor, whether I want to invest in iMoney or its competitor, it makes a big decision as to who I think will win in the end, and you always want to back the winning team. So you have to address how you can differentiate yourself versus some of your competitors.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting point because in businesses such as ours, it's usually either a monopoly or a very small oligopoly. So there's only room for 2 or 3 big players, or in some cases only 1 big player. So yeah, how you differentiate yourself from the competition is one thing, but why do you think that differentiation will win is another thing. So that's something to keep in mind.
Okay. Team, as I mentioned, is extremely important, especially early stage. Investors are investing in you, and less so to the idea. And when I raised my first round, had I not converted my part-time programmer into a full-time programmer, it would have been extremely difficult because we were operating, obviously, a tech website. I don't have technical background, and unless we've got a full-time developer on board, the team is not complete. So I want to emphasize this point because if you put yourself in the shoes of an investor and you want to invest in, say, a restaurant, right, and there isn't a chef, it wouldn't work. So this is very, very important. And so I mentioned track record and unfair advantage. Showing these and showing how you're a better team versus another potential investment is extremely important. So for me, it was showing that I had the financial background, showing that we've got extremely good traction to date.
For us, I guess we hustle harder. That's like
determination.
Kind of yeah. That's kind of about it.
So this is something that a lot of people probably not focus a lot of attention on as well. Traction is that when you start and the time you talk to investors, what has changed? Because we were showing extremely good traction in our first 90 days, and that got investors interested. And why this is important is because if I put money in your company, I want to know that you will use this money to increase the valuation of your company, right? And the only data point I have is how have you done so prior to me investing. So I'll talk a bit about subtraction. Like we grew visitors very, very rapidly. I think the first month we were at 3,000. Next month we were probably 8,000, 15,000, and by December, which was 6 months later, we were at 50,000. And this was all organic visitors. We used all means possible, content, appearing on media, as I mentioned, and you know, we did very little paid marketing. It was almost all efforts from the team, and we could show that, you know, this was what we've achieved. If we get ringgit 1 million, we could do even more, and I think that's extremely important. Yeah. And the last one, I'll probably spend a bit of time as well as founder's commitment. And again, a lot of people generally don't harp on this point, but I think it's extremely important, especially if you're raising from early stage. So your first ringgit 1 million, you know, if I'm an investor, I want to know that my money, you know, will be treated seriously, and you know, the founder that's getting this fund will do whatever it takes to grow, right? And so I mentioned, what are you giving up for this, and what's your skin in the game? And for me, it was my own investment right from the start. So I actually put in, you know, 30,000 ringgit of my own money when we started the company. So that was cost to me. And I could be working at an investment bank. So that was something big that I'm giving up as well, right? So investment banking, you know, they could pay whatever, 10, 15,000 ringgit a month, and I'm giving that up to do this. And, you know, I think that commitment was one of the key factors of why I got, you know, this sort of trust from investors. And same for you as well, right? I mean, you could have been doing anything, and, you know, you gave up all this thing, went to Founders Institute, and you showed that you've committed. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a background in mechanical engineering, so yeah, I mean, investment banking was one of my options as well, you know, but in the end, I was like, okay, fuck this shit. I mean, I can't. I mean, I talked to a lot of investment bankers, and it wasn't something I wanted. So and I knew from a very young age that I wanted to start a company. So that's kind of like where I came from. So I was like, you know, why not now, rather than, you know, get a few years of experience and just do it the proper way, try to hack my way out. Didn't really work out as I planned, but okay, you know, things turned out.
It's good. So a little bit sort of personal advice from me, and again, just, you know, this is my sort of point of view. When you look for investors, find those that are investing because of you and not your business. And, you know, I think this is extremely important because things can turn out not well with your business. You know, your ideas initially might turn out to be something that will not sustain itself for various reasons, and you, on the other hand, won't change, right? If the investors back you and not the idea, during times that are tough, they will continue to back you. And we've found as well, like just personally, we've raised from, you know, private individuals, we've raised from institutional investors. On my registry, I've got, I think, 13 different investor lists. And we know the guys that invested because of the opportunity and because of the business, they tend to be less, you know, involved. They tend to be less supportive. They tend to want to just cash out when things are going well, and, you know, they probably don't want to get involved when things are not, right? On the other hand, those that backed us because of the team, they were the ones that were the most supportive.
I can absolutely relate to that. Same thing. People who, like, people who invest for the opportunity would not usually be very involved in your business. And I mean, contrary to popular belief, I think having investors involved in your business and helping you out whenever they can is a really, really good thing. I mean, a lot of people like get annoyed by that when, you know, they ask you for updates and stuff like that. But I see it as a good thing. I see it as a really good thing. At least you have a sounding board behind to help you make decisions when times get tough, or even when times are up. So, yeah.
Yeah, so this is a good point. So fundraising always takes longer than expect. So the first one, we thought we could close it in 6 weeks. In the end, I think it took about 6 months before the money actually got in the bank. We actually had to take a short-term loan from shareholders. So my second one, which I raised 1.7 million from investors, again, we thought it was a 2-month process, or 3-month, you know, max. We started, I think, talking to investors in April. We only closed in November. And with the recent one, iSelect approached us end of February, early March, and we announced it last month. So you can tell, like, you know, obviously you've got to expect that things will always take longer because of negotiation, because of processes, and just because sometimes people are away. So always plan for delays.
Yeah, people want to save their ass when they make a decision. So that's basically the main point. If like, then you really have to and you will never know exactly how to help them save their ass. So you need to find that out, and that's the bulk of the time being taken up. And you need to be able to get people to open up to that, and that's not a real easy thing to do. That's not a real easy thing to do. That's one of the biggest challenges, I think, of raising money. It depends on who you raise from. Angel investors are easier because it's their own money. They just put it in. They just put it in themselves. They hold 100% of the decision to put it in. When you talk about institutional, there's a lot of other considerations that you need to take into account. For example, how do they what do you call that? Justify this investment to their board, stuff like that.
It's a more formal review process as well with institutional investors, because generally it's not one person that makes decisions, but a couple. So it does take longer. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so I think Johnson mentioned this. So look for investors that actually can contribute value in addition to money. So why we went with iSelect, even though we have a lot of options out there to raise from VCs, is that we see that they could contribute significant value. And it's the reason why I raised from Asia Venture Group initially, and I'm sure for you as well. Yeah. Yeah, so this one is important. Getting professional help, because we are not lawyers, and we are not, we are in the business to run companies and build companies. We don't know terms that may hurt us in the long run. And you know that lawyers charge fees, and usually it's pretty expensive. But in my experience, having raised so many rounds, it is worth every penny. And the one thing to note is getting the lawyers to actually represent you, as opposed to representing the company, is pretty important, so that they look out for your interests and how you're protected in the term sheets, in your legal documents, your rights.
Yeah, so don't try to get your lawyer friends to try to do this. Most of them, okay, unless they are really trained in the space. But most general lawyer friends, they can provide you good advice. I mean, like general level advice, but to really look through the terms, I think you need to get professional help. And if you're cheap like me, you can actually figure out ways to hack it, especially if you have more than one investor on the table, stuff like that. You just try to hack it by making use of your investors, lawyers or stuff like that. But make sure that your interests or the interest of your vision is protected. So
actually, that's a good point. So even lawyers, you want to make sure that you're talking to lawyers who are familiar with startups and investing in high-risk companies. Because we have obviously experienced lawyers where they don't understand terms very specific to the startup environment,
and it's very, very, very different. So if you give a normal lawyer your term sheet, I think it will come back you have to have 300 amendments on your term sheet, on a simple term sheet. So because the risk appetite is way different, super way different. So yeah, that's something to take note of.
Yeah, so it's not over until money is in the bank. We've heard stories, and I can relate myself as well, that companies sign term sheets, even went through with the full length shareholder agreements, but in the end they turn around, investors turn around and not actually invest. So don't count your, what's the saying, the chickens before it's hatched, is it? Yeah, so I think that's some of my sort of personal advice. We've prepared some frequently asked questions here as well, and after that we want to open up to the floor. And I think some of these are pretty relevant, and Johnson, maybe you and I, we can take turns addressing these things.
Okay.
Yeah, so do you want to go first one?
You can go first.
Okay. So common pitfalls when dealing with investor term sheets. I think key things is investor rights and shareholder rights. So making sure you've got, when you raise funds, very high level agreement generally is at a valuation level, but a lot of the terms are quite important. So things like liquidation preferences, you want to make sure that you're not giving away too much when you eventually sell the companies. There are terms that, so liquidation preference, for those that you don't know, is where if I invest ringgit in your company, when you sell it, I would take the million ringgit back first, and then still participate in some of the shares of that liquidation, right? So if I own 20%, I will still get an additional 20% of whatever sale that comes out of it, in addition to my 1 million ringgit. You want to make sure that some of these terms are protective enough for you. There are also terms around shareholder and investor rights where, if not thought carefully, it could limit your ability as an entrepreneur to carry out activities for a company. So so not personally, but we know of companies with experience where they've signed a term sheet, they've gone through and raised money and found out that the investor could stop them from partaking in any fundraising going forward. And this is one term in the contract, and there's nothing they could do. Again, like as an entrepreneur, in your first round, you want to make sure you have flexibility to direct the business where you want. Certain things like drag along right, for example, you want to be able to, if you raise funds, you want to sell it to another company, you want to have that flexibility to do so without having specific sign-off from investors.
Yeah, so basically, in a nutshell, the small little words matter. So just try to understand it all. It's been that was particularly challenging for me because I'm quite a chin chai person. I just whatever, that kind of thing. And trust is a very important component of how I run my business and I deal with people. Yeah, it's been particularly challenging for me, going through all these little things, and that's where really the lawyer would actually help you. And it's best if the lawyer is the lawyer likes you, so that he will help you. He will help you explain thoroughly, and you have to decide whether you want to take that trade-off or not. So yeah, that's all I have to add.
There's one more common pitfall. So some investors want founders to have their shares vested. So what that means is, say day one you own 100% of the company, and I'm an investor, I want to invest ringgit 1 million for, say, 30%. What sometimes they would do is say, well, once I invest, your 70% that you own would have to be on a vesting schedule, right? So that if you leave within a certain amount of time, you give up those shares, right? And it's a very, very common term. It can work, in both ways. So it's meant to be there as a protective measures for investors. When you put in the money, you don't turn around and run away and do something else, right? So in some sense, it's good, but just watch out that you're not being restricted by some of these terms. So last thing you want is, I invest in you, 2 months later I decide that you're not a good enough CEO or founder, I fire you and get someone else, and you lose all your shares. And that can happen. Yeah. Okay, so how do you raise from international investors?
We've been talking about this for the past hour, so I guess we can skip this.
Yeah,
unless you guys have any particular questions that you can ask in the Q&A later. So okay, let's just skip this. Yeah,
so the only comment I'll probably make is that obviously the challenges in location. A lot of these international investors are located, internationally by definition. We raised from a bunch of guys, anywhere from Germany to Japan to Singapore, and we actually did a lot of roadshows. So I had to personally fly down to Singapore, Jakarta. Didn't have to go to Japan, thankfully. I did a lot of Skype calls, but just something that you want to keep in mind when you want to raise for international investors is that it just takes extra time. Yep. Yeah. What's the next one? So what metrics of the business? So for us, that was very much traffic. I think generally you got to think about growth matrix. So in our industry, traffic is important, leads are important, conversions are important, revenue obviously very important as well. Although depending on the type of business you are, you may not have that early revenue traction. For mobile apps, it's downloads, it's active users, and
so before you raise an investment, you need to know exactly what you want to raise for. So that actually influences. That actually determines what metric you want to present. And you need to make sure that metric is growing. So for us in the beginning, we were focused, because we're doing a mobile app, so we were focused on engagement and retention. So how people use the app more frequently and how much engagement we get from that. as well as the user growth rate. But that was secondary importance to us. So basically, we raised a round to blast our user acquisition, to increase our user acquisition and increase kind of like the team size and stuff like that. So that was the purpose for the first raise, and so that metric matters. But for example, if you want to raise for, for example, in Ching's case, probably for international expansion, then it will be for a team thing and like a roadmap of how you're gonna expand to these countries and the possible risks and stuff like that becomes the most important thing rather than the
No, you're absolutely right.
metric.
So when we raised our first, so 1.7 million, the round before this, we had to show how we're going to use the funds to grow international expansion, right? So that was why we raised the money, and showing that we had a roadmap was quite important. Yeah, no, you're right. Okay, so how many investors did I meet before we successfully raised? Answers a lot, and I think we sort of mentioned this as well. Like, you want to start knowing and networking, and getting to telling people about your business before you need the funds. I think it's infinitely easier when you approach an investor for fundraising, that they already know your business. Yeah.
Go make more friends.
How much time did I dedicate? Yep. Okay. So I'll go through this quickly. So how much time and when's a good time to start? I mean, it is a full-time job, and generally you want to start, because it takes a lot longer than you expect, a few months before you actually run out of money. And in your first round, I think giving a 2-3 month, sort of good 2-3 month period is probably a good sort of estimate.
And it actually helps if you're genuinely interested in people. I mean, if you're a people person, you're genuinely interested in people, and you want to get to connect with people, and you're actually having fun doing it, it can be quite fun, lah. I mean, it depends on how you look at it, look at things, lah. You can choose to enjoy it, or you can choose to hate it. So, but it's a necessary thing for you to do anyway. So, yeah.
How do I start my company without funds? It's an interesting one. You can do a lot of things today without a lot of startup capital, I think. And again, it kind of depends on the model as well. So for ours, you don't expect to make revenue for the first period. That's a bit more challenging. But if you're starting an e-commerce site, something that you can sell, you can technically make revenue from day one. I think using a lot of creativity and getting a lot of free help is probably very important. Yeah, that's probably what I'll say.
Yeah, I went for a Neil Patel talk yesterday, and he echoed a lot of my thoughts. So I'm just going to use his structure because I'm lazy. But yeah, so basically what you need to do is, like, you really need to think like you need to hack situations and don't accept common knowledge as the thing, right? I mean, for example, if people say you can't get a programmer to do things for you for free, and you don't believe that. I mean, you cannot believe that. You cannot believe that, and you should try to figure out ways out of the box to actually get that to be done for you, basically. So, like, going to Google every day, searching up critical thinking questions and stuff like that to, like, train your brain to do this kind of shit is actually quite helpful. So
a lot of creative ways you can think about. Yeah. I think one thing as well is equity. So early on, if you need to hire good people, you can use that option. My only comment to that is that treat equity as a very valuable resource. It can be costly in the long run.
It's the most costly form of financing, actually.
So last question, what do I need to prepare before meeting an investor? I think you guys probably know this as well, like business plan, and you need to address some of the things we mentioned, market opportunity, team, traction. I think it's not so much what do I need to prepare, but that you be prepared and think about questions that investors will ask. Always put yourself in their shoes. You want their money. Obviously, they want to know the plan. They need to know a bit about you, and that you're someone that can execute the capital that you raise.
For me, I tend to think about it in 2 buckets. So one is, why are you worthy of the investment? I mean, why are you as a person and your business worthy of the investment? And secondly, what are you going to do with the money? So the first part is, like, why they should put money in you instead of, like, for example, FD. If you can't explain that, right? FD is fixed deposit for people that don't know. Yeah. So So you need to be able to justify why is that capital much better put in you. And traction and all that contributes to this idea, this bucket. And the second is what you want to do with money and where do you see this money bringing your business. So that's the other side of things. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we ran out of time as well. I was going to open up for questions and answers, but I'll stick around, and I think, Johnson, you probably stick around as well. Okay, yeah, sure.
Hi,
Hi.
I got a question about, you said that you got, the latest investment is from iSelect.
Yep.
Okay, my question is, when you start, why don't you just partner with iSelect, because they already have the platform? So instead of, starting from your own here, why don't you just bring their platform here?
So it's a good question. iSelect came out to Asia to look for growth opportunities. So for those that don't know, iSelect is basically a similar company like iMoney in Australia. They're number one listed on the stock exchange. I think they're worth about 350 million. But because they're Australian focus, growth opportunity was limited, right? So they came to Asia and they talked to a number of companies, including ours. In the end, we felt that whatever that we've built to date and the traction to date has got us to so far. But the next phase of our growth would come a lot from things that iSelect has done really well. So from our perspective, we see iSelect as a great partner because we can tap into the collective knowledge and experience. So they've been around for 14 years. They run a 400 to 500 man organization, and a lot of it is focused on conversion of leads into applications for banks, which is what we are starting to do today. So to your point, I think we are using a lot of the platforms or technologies that iSelect already has, or at least we can tap into. But it is part of the investment. It is one of the reasons why we're really excited, and part of the deal as well.
I saw your website is iMoney.my, is it? So the Australian, you are using the same website?
No, so iSelect has a website, so iselect.com.au. They also operate a website called InfoChoice. But in terms of the business model, it's very much the same. They provide...
No, sorry. I mean, in Malaysia, you use iMoney.com, is it?
No, so our website is www.imoney.my.
Huh?
iMoney.my.
iMoney.my
Yes.
For Malaysia?
Need to buy the domain already.
The domain is for Malaysia?
Yes, for Malaysia.
And then for Australia, same?
No, so Australia is, we don't have any presence in Australia. We only operate in Southeast Asia.
Only on Malaysia?
So we are in Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Singapore,
Use
Hong
the same,
Kong, and
same
Thailand.
domain?
Yes.
Same domain.my?
It will be iMoney in the respective country.
I mean, in Indonesia, how? What?
Indonesia we just changed our
.com.
company name. So we used to be called iMoney as well. So we had an iMoney.co.id
.id?
web address, but we've changed it to an Indonesian name called Ataduit. Yeah. So if you go online today and Google iMoney Indonesia, you'll find that, and this is true research that we have found that Indonesian specific name, is very important.
Oh, that means a different name. It's not
Yes.
no more. It's not iMoney.
Yeah. So no, we're still called iMoney everywhere in Singapore and Philippines,
iMoney.
except for
Okay.
Indonesia.
And then I saw your iMoney.my. The unit trust. You are signing with the Fund supermarket. Is it? Fund
Yes.
supermarket. Are you signing with the Fund supermarket?
So we do partner with certain partners. For unit trust, for example, we partner with Fund Supermart, yes.
So how many advertisement in this? How many advertisement in this iMoney.my? Advertisement in iMoney.my.
So I'm not really sure what you mean by advertisement.
We're actually running low on time, so can I just get
We'll
the next
chat
question?
later after.
Yeah, we'll talk to him offline. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Yi-Chen. I got a question is like for a startup, we will need different funding at different stages. So how do you take care of the benefit of a first batch of investor, second batch of investor, and like for the future investor? Will the share be dilute or how is it? How was the arrangement to take care of all parties' benefits? Thank you.
Different valuations.
Yeah, so typically the early investors will get diluted, but because
They
the
entered at
valuations
a-
increase,
yeah.
the overall value of their investment would have increased as well.
Yeah, so basically, like you buy something at $1, then that $1 thing increased to $3, and the next person buys it at $3. So the guy that bought it at $1 wins. So that's essentially what it means.
Normally, no, because when you raise funds for growth, and you want the funds that you raise to go into the company as opposed to paying out early investors. I mean, there are structures like that, but typically, like for us, every single dollar we have raised have gone into the company to grow the company and not been used to pay it out.
So that's something you need to look out for in your terms. So some investors require that, and if that doesn't suit your vision, or that's not the type of investors you want, then you should just not do the deal.
Hi, my question is to both of you. How much ethics and leadership played along the role when you were building these enterprises?
So how much what?
Sorry.
Ethics and leadership played a vital role when you were building these enterprises from startup. Thanks.
Ethics as in moral ethics?
Just generally on your culture, on the way from a startup beginner, and all the way from your leadership to man up your team.
Well, so if you're talking about culture, I think it's important in just building any company. And from day one, we are focused very much on things like cultures and the way we conduct business. So it is very important. Whether it impacts fundraising or not, I think it bears impact to your company and how it's run and how attractive it is. But I don't know if there's any direct correlation between having good culture and investment value. Probably there will be. Generally, like
Yeah, I think there will be. Like, for example, probably like there will be differences in the investors that go for his company and the investors that go for my company. Like, you see the way we are dressed is very, very different as well. I mean, you need to know your own values and what's important to you, and find the fits that fit in your business, rather than the other way around. And like, I've done this mistake in the past as well. I mean, like, really just getting what's available. That almost always never works out. Almost always, there are exceptions, but yeah, almost always never works out. You need to find that person that fits you, and the bulk of the effort goes into the search.
Hi, my name is Ray. Yeah, thanks for sharing, Ching Wei and Johnson. So my question is, when you first get started, you have this one idea, like iMoney, you say comparison site. So different phases that you raise funds, how do you get the ideas, and what are the investment, right? Growth for, is it investment in tools, resources, or talents?
So we started with a very basic idea, but it matured. So when I first started, it was very much just, I want a website to help consumers compare. And over time, we've morphed into, well, compare, why don't we also help people apply? So today, we're compare and apply in multiple countries. I think the investment that we raised very much matched that evolution of ideas. So the first round that we raised 1 million was to build a good team to execute the first idea, or the first phase of the idea. And then the second round was, all right, we need more money to expand internationally, because that's our ambition now, becoming a regional leader. And yeah, with iSelect, it's very much becoming the household brand. We want iMoney to be remembered by every Malaysian in this country.
Sorry, what was the question again? I was dreaming. I think for us, it was less of a planned thing, right? I mean, and we changed directions a lot. So So for us, it was actually like, we try a lot of stuff out. And what works, we try to double down on them. So that's essentially what we do. And it's a never-ending search to like keep finding the next best way to grow, next best thing to do to grow the company. So at a point where you find something that works is when you really race to double down on it. So for example, if I feel that going to another country now works, and shit, I don't have capital to carry that project out, so then I just race to try to expand to another country. And I know like roughly, I won't say exactly, but roughly, like roughly how much you will need, plus a certain buffer kind of thing, and raise that and just go for that project. You might be wrong, things might change in the future, but but that's at least the intention for you to raise.
Hi guys, my name is Jolene. I'm a practicing corporate lawyer and IP lawyer, and I'd like to say thanks a lot for your talk. So yeah, the emphasis that you put on expert legal advice is just so important, and I think it's really something that people shouldn't overlook. And I totally agree in paying for legal advice, obviously because I'm a lawyer, but not just
Start
that.
handing out your name cards.
But because we have your backs as well, and we will bargain things for you, and we will fight for you as well. So yeah, I would just like to say thanks for your talk, and thanks for thinking about us lawyers.
Oh, you're welcome.
Welcome.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Ching Wei.
Thank you, guys.